What's going on, everyone? This is Johnny Franklin coming to you with another video. And today I want to talk about one of the greatest historical leaders of all time. One of the most prolific social activists. And man, words can't describe how great this man was. His legacy continues to live on today. I want to talk about and I want to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, as far as remembering Dr. Martin Luther King and honoring his legacy, we pretty much celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King on what we call MLK Day, which is celebrated on the third Monday in January. We celebrate that every year. But we don't too much talk about and we don't honor April the 4th, which is today. Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated on April the 4th, 1968. And that's a day that doesn't really get much recognition. It doesn't get heavily publicized. And it's something that we should talk about and we should honor more as human beings. As a nation, we should honor and recognize that day as well. Even though Dr. Martin Luther King lost his life on that day, and that was a very drastic way for him to go out being assassinated, being shot down like that, we should still recognize and honor him more on that day, which is today, April the 4th. Dr. Martin Luther King is not discussed that much, especially not to our youth. There's a lot of young kids that don't even know Dr. Martin Luther King. I don't think they even talk about Dr. Martin Luther King that much in the public schools anymore. I mean, he's recognized and they don't have to go to school on MLK Day. But as far as leaders of society, we should teach our younger generation more about the history of Dr. Martin Luther King, what he did for this world and what he did for the nation. I just have a few things here on my pad that I just wanted to point out and highlight that I wanted just to discuss. These are just a few facts about Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King was born on January the 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, me and my fiance, we went to Atlanta, Georgia last year in May around my birthday, and we actually went in and toured the actual house that Dr. Martin Luther King was raised in. If you haven't been to Atlanta, Georgia, and you haven't been inside that house, it's a must that you put that on your life agenda. Especially if you're an African American. You need to make time, schedule, and go visit that house before your time is up on this earth. It was an amazing experience. Just to walk through the house where Dr. Martin Luther King was raised, it was amazing. It was amazing. You gotta go see it. If you haven't seen it, you have to go see the house. Like I stated, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated on April the 4th, 1968, which is today. He was assassinated here in Memphis, Tennessee. Right here in Memphis, Tennessee. It's crazy. Dr. Martin Luther King was in the front as far as leading the civil rights movement from the 1950s all the way up to when he was assassinated. He fought for equality and civil rights, not only for African Americans, but he wanted it for all mankind, all human beings. Dr. Martin Luther King was a very educated man. He attended Morehouse College at the age of 15. He was very young when he first went to college. When he was at Morehouse, he studied medicine and law. Now, I would say this. Part of the civil rights movement and a part of that whole equality movement was giving African Americans the opportunity to go to school in the same schools as white Americans. And it's sad that today it's so many African Americans who don't take advantage of the opportunity of getting an education. Back then they had to fight, scratch, crawl just to try to get us education. As far as African Americans, trying to get us education. And there's so many African Americans today who are so lazy, don't even want to try to go to school. Now I will say this. Going to school may not be for everyone. Trying to get an associate degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree, doctorate, it may not be for everyone. But some people don't even want to try. Even if you don't want to get one of those type of degrees. I mean, trying to get a certification or getting licensed in some type of professional field. Most of us, we don't even try to do that. And it's crazy how our historical leaders, our ancestors, fought hard to try to get us in where we can get the same quality of education as white Americans, and we don't even take advantage of it today. Now I would say this. If you one of those individuals, if you haven't even tried to do something and you have all this opportunity of education out there now these days, you need to take advantage. You need to stop being lazy. You need to get off your do nothing and do something. Because our historical leaders fought hard for us to be able to go to school. It was one point in time in slavery, they didn't even want African Americans to know how to read. We eventually learned how to read. We started teaching ourselves. We started teaching others. So take advantage of education. Education is very valuable. And now that we, as African Americans, have the opportunity, we must take advantage of it. Dr. Martin Luther King, he graduated in 1948 from Morehouse College, and he enrolled in, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Crozier Theological Seminary, where he earned a bachelor's degree. And he later on went on and furthered his education. He enrolled in a graduate program at Boston University, and in Boston is where he met his wife, Coretta Scott. She didn't know it at the time, but that's where he met Coretta Scott, and she later became Coretta Scott King. He completed his graduate studies at Boston University, and he went on to eventually earn a doctorate in systematic theology 2 years later. So Dr. Martin Luther King was a very educated man. Very educated man. And from some of the previous readings that I went over, I don't know if it's true or not, but a lot of people stated that, Dr. Martin Luther King wasn't even just the brightest student. He wasn't a straight A student like that. Most say that he was just an average student. He was like a B average or a C plus student. But for the most part, you don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be the brightest to get a degree. You don't. You don't have to be a straight A student to get a degree. Because when you get into certain programs like a bachelor's degree or a master's degree program, it's more so about effort. It's more so about how much time and effort you put into your studies and that you put into your work. And at the end of the day, no matter how smart you are, if someone works harder than you, works twice as hard as you, they can achieve more than you can. Don't matter how smart or how sweet you are. But a lot of people sit back, who think they're smart and think they'll be able to do a lot of things, and they don't even put in as much effort. Just imagine if you're a smart individual and you put in an enormous amount of effort, there's no telling how much you can accomplish. But you don't have to be the smartest. You just have to work the hardest. You have to grind. And that's definitely what Dr. Martin Luther King did. He grinded. He got his bachelor's. He attended Boston University, where he completed his studies, and he went on to earn a doctorate degree. So, especially growing up in his household, education was a big thing. His mother and his father preached education. They wanted their kids to have a bright future, and they knew that education was the way. So they didn't play. You was getting your education in the King household. You was going to school. You was getting your education. Dr. Martin Luther King eventually, married Coretta Scott King in 1953, and they settled and established their home in Montgomery, Alabama. And Dr. Martin Luther King at that time became the pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. He started his ministry. He pretty much picked up where his father left off. His father was a minister. So, as you can see, he later on went into that avenue. Dr. Martin Luther King did a lot of great things. He put together a lot of different organizations to help lead the civil rights movement. He participated in a lot of boycotts. He visited many places all across the globe, preaching and talking about peace and equality. And he tried to work with a lot of nation leaders that had their hands in the workings of changing laws and changing policies to try to help African Americans reach that point where we were seen as an equal. Back then, a lot of white Americans did not want to see us as an equal. For the most part, African Americans, we were already brought over here to America on ships as slaves. A lot of people back then didn't want to see that. They didn't want to see a lot of white people back then did not want to see African Americans as equals. They didn't want them to have the same opportunities. African Americans were already brought over here on slave ships. So our main objective and our main priority was set for us to be workers, to work for America. Even though we lived in America, we weren't treated as true Americans. But African Americans were responsible for building the foundation and building up America. But African Americans, we've come a long way, a very long way. Dr. Martin Luther King, he had to go to jail during the civil rights movement, and he wrote a letter, the letter from Birmingham when he was in jail. If you haven't had the opportunity to read that letter, I advise you to go and read that letter. I haven't looked or read that letter in a long time. I'm gonna have to go look it up myself to go check it out. I have a dream. I have a dream speech. Amazing, amazing, amazing speech. If you haven't heard the I have a dream speech, you have to go online and listen to it, or you have to go get the transcript of it. Very powerful speech. One of the greatest speeches. To me, it's the greatest speech in history of all time. Nothing tops the I have a dream speech. And like I said, we honor Dr. Martin Luther King on the third Monday of January every year. And it's been celebrated since 1986. From 1986 to 2019, that's a long time. That's a very long time. But besides just recognizing Dr. Martin Luther King on MLK Day, we should honor and recognize him even on his death date, which is today, April the 4th, 1968, the day he was assassinated. So Dr. Martin Luther King did a lot for this world. He did a lot for this nation. Just imagine Dr. Martin Luther King didn't put himself in the spotlight. If he didn't step up and fight for the civil rights of African Americans, fighting for equality, fighting for respect, just imagine how the world would be today. Can't even imagine how it would be today. And for the most part, if Dr. King was alive right now, he would be disappointed because much of his work is not continuing to be pushed. I mean, you have a lot of people out here who call themselves real leaders and still pushing for different laws and different policies to be passed to help make things more balanced in America. The civil rights movement is still going on. If you think that the civil rights movement ended back in the day, back in the 1960s, 70s, you sadly mistaken. The civil rights movement is still going on today. And the reason why I say it's still going on today, because there's still no equality. African Americans, we are still shorted. We're still going to prison, and we're still being incarcerated at a very high rate. Some of the laws are not designed for African Americans to thrive. It's crazy. That battle is still being fought today. Civil rights battle is still going on today. And it's a lot of leaders, so-called leaders, who pretty much just want to get in front of the TV, just want to get in front of that camera. They're not really carrying on Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. But those that are, who are really putting in work, putting their hands to work, doing things, trying to get more justice and more equality, I really salute and I acknowledge those people. I really appreciate those who are really trying to do something positive within the community. They're trying to carry on Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. But like I stated, we should honor April the 4th more often. It doesn't really get heavily publicized as it should be. But that day should be talked about and it should be honored more. Dr. Martin Luther King did a lot for the world. It was sad that he lost his life the way that he did. But Dr. Martin Luther King will always be remembered. I'm very grateful for what he's done. I look up to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was a great man. He will never be forgotten. He will always be a historical figure. Always. And for you all, do your part. I mean, you may not be a historical leader. You may not be active in a community, doing several things to try to help change the law or change different policies that control our communities or change the world. But just do your part. It's so much hatred and so much jealousy. So many people trying to step on other people to get up in life, and you know, it shouldn't be about that. It should be all about love. And especially African Americans, we need to come together more often to try to help each other, because that's what Martin Luther King wanted. He wanted us to continue the process, continue the dream, to continue to keep pushing. But Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Will forever be in the minds and hearts of many people. He will never be forgotten. His imprint that he left on the world was amazing. Simply amazing. And we must continue to carry on his dream. So whoever you are, just continue to keep doing what you do. Continue to carry on Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. Continue to move in a very righteous way. And as African Americans, we have to do more. We have to do better. We have to do better. No question about it. So I didn't want to make a too long video. It's like I'm already rolling up on 20 minutes. 20 minutes roll fast. But I just wanted to honor and recognize Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm glad that he did what he did. It was unfortunate that he had to leave this earth the way that he did. But he made some very powerful moves. And he definitely had the ball rolling, and we must continue to keep the ball rolling. So thank you, Dr. Martin Luther King. Thank you for everything that you've done. Your legacy will continue to move on, and let's honor and let's bring more awareness, not only to MLK Day, but this day in history, April the 4th. That's all I have for today. Y'all take it easy.